I was never really a runner. The way I see running is a gift, especially when you have stage 4 cancer. I'm Anne. I'm running the Boston Marathon, presented by Bank of America. I run for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute to give people like me a chance to thrive in life, even with cancer.
Join Bank of America in helping Anne's cause. Give if you can at BofA.com/supportAnne. What would you like the power to do? References to charitable organizations is not an endorsement by Bank of America Corporation. Copyright 2025.
This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
It's this half hour brought to you by Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket, imports, domestics, microbrews. The best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drink, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and hot every day. 6 great flavors of slushies. And not only that, now you can go out and get ready to drink cocktails. High Noon, Jack Daniels, Crown Royal. And the Pickle Bar, led by the Barrels and the Dills, indeed second to none. All at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. We now bring in the best of the best, and that is Neal Coolong. Sir, welcome.
As always, it is my pleasure to be here. I hope you guys are doing well.
Glad you could carve out a little bit of time considering the free agency. This has been...
We're still digging out.
How wild has this been?
It's more... You expect the volume. You expect there to be a lot, but it's more like they seem to come on top of each other, you know? So you get like 3 of them at once, and you kind of have to discern that, see what happened, whip out the abacus to do the salary cap math and put all the information together. By the time that you're maybe halfway through that, another one came up. So they kind of get backloaded, and you have to throw, as much up as you can. And it's an endurance test. It tests your sanity for sure. We only messed up on one, so.
Yeah. So what does Minnesota do now? Is it the J.J. McCarthy show, or do they find a stopgap as a backup?
I would think they're going to give McCarthy every opportunity to be the starter. Now, that's the political way of saying it's his team. I think the Vikings, their front office, their upper management has done as good a job as any in the NFL over the last 2 seasons, putting themselves into a position to be a championship-level team. But at the same time, the entire thing falls apart if they can't get good quarterback play. And Sam Darnold set that bar pretty high for a quarterback, not a first-year guy, but a first-year starter, first-year player, to come in and do what Darnold did. That's a tall order. That's a lot to ask of somebody, and everything really is going to hinge on that. If they're not able to throw the ball effectively, everything Kevin O'Connell does and seems to stand for as a coach kind of goes away. They sunk a huge amount of capital into their offensive line, and then on top of that, they put a bunch into their front 7 as well, and retained one of the top free agents on the market in the secondary, and signed another corner as well. So they don't have many draft picks. This is what they had to do. You knew that going in, but all the tools are there. It's really just going to come down to, I don't want to call it a gamble, as much a gamble as the 10th overall pick in any draft is going to be. It's really going to come down on McCarthy's ability to sustain drives, to maintain possession, and to get the ball to the playmakers that he's got within that arsenal to beat some pretty tough opponents. It's a really good division. The NFC North got even better by and large, and free agency, it's not even really probably 15-20% still to go yet. Green Bay and Detroit can still make some moves and continue to compete with everybody else.
All right, so what did you think of the Metcalf trade?
I think it's the move they had to make. And
I agree.
It's one that you and I have talked about quite a bit. They did not intend last season to go into the year with the receivers that they had. They legitimately thought they were going to be able to get a high-end receiver somewhere. And with Metcalf on the market, I kind of jokingly said when news broke that he requested a trade, I said I'll be upset if the Steelers aren't offering a second-round pick and a late-round swap in order to get him and then sign him to a $30 million a year deal. It's what they had to do. I think that's probably on the upper end of what you could expect in a trade like that, but it's what they had to do. They needed to bring in somebody else. And part of that is you can't give 5 targets a game to Van Jefferson anymore. Obviously, that's not going to work. You simply don't know what you're going to get with George Pickens. It's nothing to do with his talent. It's more the maturity level, his ability just to adjust to whatever else is going on around him. He's not very good at that. You can't give a guy like that $50 million guaranteed over even 5 years. You can't give him a $150 million contract. You've got to have somebody that you can rely on, and I think Metcalf is that. Does Metcalf, as far as his game-to-game production, does he merit $30 million a year? Maybe not, but I think they're paying a premium for him to come in and be a captain-level leader, an alpha within the room, both the receiver room and the offensive room, and be a top-flight kind of presence for them. And I think he can be that if he's kind of channeled in the right way. He's got a bit of an emotional streak within him as well, which is good for a football player. He's got to grow into the leadership role as well. I think that's why they want to sign him to the contract and were willing to give up as much capital as they did. It was a move that they absolutely had to make happen, and we'll see what the results will be. But they were not going into this draft with the idea that they're going to find somebody at 21 or lower to be that kind of a guy. Pickens can still play; he'll still get the ball plenty if the Steelers keep him. But they need somebody they can count on for 17 games.
All right, they're going to need somebody to count on for 17 games to throw him the ball. We know Justin Fields has gone to the Jets, so, I mean, with Garrett Cole out, they now have the hardest thrower in New York.
I don't know. Still not sure of that.
But what do the Steelers do? Is it Wilson? Is it Aaron Rodgers? Is it another option? What is it?
Everything that I've heard, and I think the conversation should start with this. Why do they not want Russell Wilson back, or why are we led to believe they don't want Russell Wilson back? There are rumblings that he wasn't really in line with the team, with the direction the team wanted to go. They didn't particularly like him. It's really kind of what it comes down to. Yeah. And I will fully admit that it's got shades of the same stuff you heard in Denver, probably toward the end of his time in Seattle as well. Maybe it's just convenient to say that that's it. Physically speaking, there are questions of his ability. I don't think that's unfair to say. Maybe everything that Russ said about conversations with the team regarding a contract earlier this offseason, maybe it's more on him. Maybe he doesn't want to. I'm not 100% sure, but I would think even if their pursuit of Justin Fields really says probably got this wrong last year, at the very least, you can't avoid that question. Fields started 6 games for you. You understandably started Wilson when he was healthy enough to come back, but you never put Fields back in there. Now you want to sign Fields to a multi-year deal. What happened? He literally didn't play. How did he get better in that time? It's awkward. If the Steelers want to move past that, I get it, but that question is still there. If you don't want Wilson at all, though, it's really questionable. What direction did you have last season, and why is it so different now? Something had to have happened, I guess is what I'm saying. I mean, we've heard that Wilson irritated the coaching staff a bit with his decision to kind of do his own thing within the game, call his own plays. There was, some grumblings from players following the Chiefs' loss in particular that, some players are kind of doing their own thing, considering the defense couldn't stop water from running uphill in those games. You would have thought maybe they were talking about defensive players, but maybe they were talking about Wilson. I'm not sure, but it just doesn't seem like there's interest in bringing Wilson back. And if that's the case, process of elimination, you only got one guy left. Assuming you don't want to start Bison legend Trey Lance or Bison legend Carson Wentz, you're probably going to be signing Aaron Rodgers, which is bizarro world to me. I don't know how we got to this point, but it's weird to suggest that Wilson's age is getting to him, but you're going to go sign Rodgers. The level of the deal, I guess, is probably more important than anything else. But watching him play, and Steve, you and I talked about this 3 years ago when Rodgers was done in Green Bay and the Jets acquired him. I said at that point, watch Rodgers last season in Green Bay. Don't tell me he's still even close to the same player. Physically, he diminished quite a bit. And he looked terrible with the Jets last year. Terrible.
Yes.
I don't know how you get past that, but plain and simple, he was on the same level as the last year of Roethlisberger, the last year of Phillip Rivers, the last year of Matt Ryan, guys that it seems like good for them for collecting one last check, but watching them play, there's nothing you can do offensively with a quarterback that really can't move and can't throw. And I think we saw that pretty often with the Jets. Every now and again, you can kind of, push the sun back in the sky a little bit, make a play or two, but it's not going to be pretty. Not that anything offensively for the Steelers has been over the last couple of years. I think he's the only option. So you're going to prepare for most likely a season of Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh.
Well, but here's the other part. What does it tell you about the position and the lack of depth of it that Aaron Rodgers has a market and Russell Wilson has a market, even though they are past what you would perceive to be their prime?
Yeah, I don't know if another sport continues to value any position that has shown a noticeable diminished skill, diminished ability in a player, the way the NFL does with its quarterbacks. And some of that is simply the market because, $17 million is nothing to joke about. That's a pretty good baseball player. $17 million isn't even half of the top 6 or 7 quarterbacks in the league. So there is something to be said just about the relative value of what they're doing. But the fact that they can still go out there, it goes to show there's a tremendous amount of value that a team places on the idea of experience, knowledge, the ability to just simply read what a team is doing and, put the ball where it's supposed to go, assuming they're able to do that. Peyton Manning, I've said this before, Peyton Manning is probably the worst quarterback to have ever won a Super Bowl. In the season that he was in,
That's right.
Manning was a shell of himself. He was worse than the guys that I mentioned before. But he's smart. He knew what to do, and they were able to be kind of successful offensively because he would try at least to put the ball where it needed to go. But it was obvious that he was at the end of the road. And without the Herculean effort of that defense, Von Miller in particular, they don't win a Super Bowl. Everybody knows that. I don't think that you're necessarily going to get that from Rodgers, but at the same time, you are getting, 17, 18 years of high-level experience, knowledge, leadership, hopefully, to bestow upon a team. You hope that he is doing those kinds of things. And I think when a team looks at the sum of the individual parts and what he brings in, the value of that adds up to, what's generally seen as a pretty high dollar figure for the player. And they're not really getting it for his arm strength anymore. It's his vision, it's his brain, his leadership ability, at the very least, the overall sum of experience that he has. You hope that he's able to live up to that to some degree. I don't know if he is, but I know that Aiden O'Connell is available, I think, anyway.
Yeah,
I don't think you want to sign him to start be the starting quarterback of your team starting in March.
He's a backup.
So, yeah, some guys are just pretty obvious that at half of Rodgers' age, he doesn't have a quarter of the physical ability. So he's not going to be able to get the job done. Therefore, guys like Rodgers, Wilson, they're going to get those opportunities until they really just kind of get a debilitating injury and can't go anymore. They'll continue to hang around.
And then there was the Myles Garrett saga. I was on a show in Cleveland Thursday, and at that point, because they wanted to talk about mostly Abdul Carter, they brought up Tyler Warren, they brought up Drew Aller, and Jim Knowles, the new defensive coordinator, but primarily it was about Abdul Carter. Of course, the Browns are sitting in the 2 spot. Now, at this point, the 2 hosts are begging Myles Garrett to come back, but but the Browns are like, we're not talking to him. And then 24 hours later, they signed him. What was your thought on that one?
I've been asked this probably 30 times, and I each step of the way, I'll say the same thing then that I'll say the same thing now that I did at the beginning of it. He wants a new contract.
Yeah.
Okay. If they could facilitate a trade to Philadelphia, be the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL, I'm sure he would have been happy with that. There's no way that was going to happen. He's not able to go to a team and get the money that he wants. If he was serious, it would have been, I'll take 50% of what I'm getting paid now to get out of here. Right. Never once mentioned that, just a bunch of flowery rhetoric about how he wants to win. He's rebranding himself more than anything. He wants to be seen as a champion. All these things that, even anyone objective can say Cleveland is nowhere close to that in the next 3 years. Nowhere near that.
They've got Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, now they just traded for Kenny Pickett on top of that. The memes about Garrett with Pickett coming in, it gets even better. He wanted the contract that he got, and frankly, I'd argue that he earned it. That's reasonable for him, where the market is, how much the salary cap has increased, the revenue the league is bringing in, his impact on the game, he's worth that. So I felt almost like I think he went after a swarm of flies with a rocket launcher. I'm not sure that he needed to do all of that. It damaged his reputation. He's probably, for all intents and purposes, he's going to finish his career in Cleveland. Maybe he plays a year elsewhere, chasing a ring. But for all intents and purposes, he's going to always be seen as a Cleveland Brown. He damaged his reputation among his own fan base to do that, which is the most ironic thing because he says he wants to win, right? That's the main thing. For him to just, all of a sudden, well, you know what, we worked it out. All of a sudden now, despite the fact that I haven't played it down, the team has literally made no moves one way or another. Now they're good enough for me to say that they're going to win. Now I'm going to justify the entire 500-word message that I wrote out talking about how I glorify winning, and these are all the things I want to do. None of that matters now that I have this contract because we're going to win in Cleveland. Could have done the same thing, in my opinion. Just it's disingenuous. I felt like it was a gross overplay of everything, trying to rebrand is the word I keep coming back to. And it's funny to me because it's like, why on earth do you even need to do that? What's the point? You don't have any particular reason to make it personal the way you did. You could have said, I want this contract, but really this is a way to cover up the fact that you were prepared to play hardball with the franchise, which, again, I'm fully in support of him doing that. He earned it. He should get it. To do it the way he did it, I felt was probably too much scorched earth. And it's not I don't want to call it the decision, but I feel like the thought process going into it did not accurately weigh the consequences of everything that took place before it. So with that, it has kind of strands of LeBron's decision with a better outcome, of course, for the city of Cleveland. But it didn't need to go to this. It felt like it was just way too much theater for little gain to anybody, and the reputation hit he's going to take is not going to go away anytime soon. Yeah,
I mean, I saw that and went, okay. I mean, that was interesting. The Steelers might be interested in Darius Slay. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, he signed back with the Giants yesterday, but that's a good name to bring up. Because to be honest with you,
Slayton signed with the Giants. Talking about the corner Darius Slay.
Oh, so Oh, yes. Sorry. See, I'm in crazy mode here. This is everybody.
It's okay.
Slay.
It's okay.
The first thing I think of with Darius Slay is Washington chump walking him back to the wall in the game against Philadelphia, and seeing Slay try to fight back, and Washington getting the penalty for it. I'm curious to see the interactions between those two come training camp. That'll be interesting. Slay is a fairly affordable, fairly useful cornerback, a position that I feel the Steelers probably want to prioritize in this draft anyway. So it's not a bad move. Here's the key thing, though, and I think this is important. If you look at the amount of activity the Steelers have had to this point in free agency and who they've brought in, the manner in which they've brought in a trade. Myles Sanders is a guy to look at, by the way. These are players who were cut by their teams, which means if the Steelers sign them, it doesn't affect their comp formula. So they're still in line to get, I think it's 4 picks in compensatory return next year. If they get that, they set up for what's kind of thought to be a better quarterback class. But you and I have spoken about this many times. So we always say the next year is a great quarterback class.
Yeah, right.
We'll see what happens. I remember when Phil Yurkovich was thought to be a first round pick. I don't think he even got an invitation to camp.
No.
That stuff happens, and we get it. But the point is, Slay was cut. I think they're going to go after Myles Sanders. He was cut by the Panthers. These guys don't affect that comp formula. And if that's the case, the Steelers clearly are not looking to mess with that. So the guys they're bringing in are guys that will not affect their future bounty for losing Dan Moore, whoever else they lost, Justin Fields, Larry Ogunjobi. All of that adds up to their future benefit. So in my mind, a guy like Slay fits that need without them being forced to go draft a rookie who can start right away. That's not necessarily pressure that you want going into a draft, one that you don't have a second-round pick for now. So it makes sense in that sense. I don't think that Slay is thought to be a long-term solution, to put it mildly. I think he's going to be out there to more or less fill the same kind of role Dante Jackson did last year, which Jackson signed like $11.5 million, something like that, over 2 years. Fairly reasonable contract for a starting level cornerback. They didn't want to retain him. They don't really want to spend a bunch of money now, because I think with that too, you save some to roll over onto your cap next season, get those comp picks back. I think they're really looking to rebuild, and the moves they're making right now, early on in free agency, kind of suggest that. And Slay, good enough player. I don't think he's going to embarrass himself or the organization, but you're not looking at a top flight guy either, and they're also not paying for that. So stopgap. They'll draft one anyway, but Slay's the right guy for them to sign for the situation the franchise is in.
My friend, always a pleasure. Back to the grind for you. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Neal Coolong back with more in a moment here on News Radio 1070 WKOK, brought to you by Brewers Outlet.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is, because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.